Howdy, my name is Nonat, and welcome back to a brand new installment of Advanced Archetypes. Guys, we're on the second to last episode of this series. I'm all full of emotion. There's only 11 archetypes left. We're gonna do 6 today and 5 next week, and then we're done. Guess we'll have to look at the Lost Omens archetypes. But let's finish up here in the APG before we get too excited. Starting off today, we are looking at the Ritualist. Also, because of my new awesome camera setup, I can do crazy new edits. Whoa, look at me, I'm in space. I can already tell I'm going to have too much fun with this. But starting off, looking into the Ritualist, I realized I had never really looked into rituals before. And honestly, if you don't know a lot about rituals, who can blame you? They're not really pushed super hard in the core rulebook, but there's some really cool ones. Everything from the original creating undead before the animate undead, to animating objects, to summoning demons to assist you. It's almost like its whole unique type of spell casting. But the long and short of a ritual, just so you know what we're talking about here today, is that a ritual is sort of a long-form spell. They take an extended period of time to cast, usually for much better results. But on top of this, you need to succeed at some kind of skill check during the ritual. Most rituals also require more than one participant. What's nice is that only the primary caster actually needs to know the ritual. So if you're the only person in your party who knows the ritual, your allies can still assist you even if they don't know it. And that's all that really needs to be known right now. There's a primary caster, there's secondary casters which assist with the ritual, everybody makes skill checks, and depending on the success, the ritual goes better at the end of its cast time. So starting off with the Ritualist dedication, at level 4 you need to be at least an expert in one of the 4 magical skills of Arcana, Occultism, Religion, or Nature. You get a permanent +2 circumstance bonus to all primary skill checks for a ritual, which is great. You also get to learn 2 uncommon rituals just for taking the dedication, which I should mention, this is an uncommon dedication. You do need to get permission from your dungeon master in order to take this. But come on, DMs, let your players take this dedication. Oh my gosh, rituals are so cool and you have no idea. On top of this, every 4 levels you gain, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, you gain an additional extra ritual, up to half your level. For all of these rituals, you need to be the primary caster, and you actually cannot teach these rituals to anyone else with just the dedication. Flexible Ritualist is where it starts to get really cool. You count yourself as one of the secondary casters. So if a ritual requires a primary caster and a secondary caster, you can cast it by yourself. Or if it requires a primary caster and 2 secondary casters, you only need 1 additional caster because you count as 2 of them. It does state, however, that if the ritual specifically targets one of the secondary casters, you cannot replace them. Resourceful Ritualist just lets you attempt harder rituals earlier. If you're an expert, you can attempt master proficiency rituals. If you're a master, you can attempt legendary rituals. You get it. Efficient rituals just makes them more usable. If a ritual would usually take 1 full day to cast, you can do it in 4 hours. And if it would normally take more than 1 day, it takes half the time. Obviously, this is most beneficial for the 1 day down to 4 hours. But hey, if there's a 10-day ritual and you can do it in 5, hopefully that'll come up, because that is a lot of time saved. Assured Ritualist just improves your success chance based on your allies' blunders. With the Assured Ritualist feat, if a secondary caster fails or critically fails their check, you treat their success as 1 higher. Simple as that. Though you can only do this for 1 secondary caster, not all of them. And this does say, after rolling all secondary checks, choose 1 check to improve. So this means you can improve your own as well if you have Flexible Ritualist. And finally, Speedy Rituals is a direct upgrade to Efficient Rituals, which converts any day duration of rituals down to hours. So if something would take 6 days to cast, you cast it in 6 hours, which is so freaking rad. And that's it. Again, if you don't know about the rituals, this is gonna seem probably like a lot of gobbledygook and like it might not be super useful. But some of these rituals are great. Some of these are like the summon or animate spells but permanent. For example, just for taking the dedication, you could take the animate object ritual, which means if you succeed, the object animates permanently. Granted, if you normal succeed, all it will do is defend itself. It will not follow your commands. But if you critically succeed and animate an object, it becomes your permanent minion. Just to put that into perspective, the animate object first level spell for arcane casters only lasts, I believe, 1 minute and takes a spell slot. Rituals don't even take a spell slot. Granted, this takes 24 hours to cast, but if you're not in a rush with your party or you're just having some downtime, you can just attempt to animate that broom and have a Disney's Fantasia companion for your next adventure. I personally think if my GM will allow it, next time I get to play, so 4 years from now, I plan to play a Ritualist. I think that would be so cool. Moving on to the Scout, whose dedication is pretty useful. It just directly upgrades the Scout exploration activity. Instead of giving you and your allies a +1 to initiative if you're attacked while scouting, you and your allies gain a +2 to initiative. You also gain the Scout's Warning Ranger feat, which just means at the start of combat, if you're rolling Perception for initiative, you can just use a free action and give your allies a +1 to initiative. The Scout dedication basically just gives your entire party bonus initiative in almost every encounter. It's pretty nuts. Scout's Charge is a really cool twist on the classic martial 2 action for 3 actions. Instead of the usual stride, stride, strike, this is stride, feint, strike. On top of that, you don't have to roll deception, you can roll stealth for your feint action, so you get to move, potentially knock the enemy flat-footed, and then make a strike, all for 2 actions. And remember that the feint action is not an attack action, so your attack is at your full bonus, so you get to move your 25 or 30 feet, give them a -2 to armor class, and attack. Imagine this on a rogue. 2 actions to move, flat-footed, and sneak attack. Disgusting. You don't even need a high charisma stat to use it in this way. Terrain Scout is good, but personally I think it should have been a skill feat. Maybe it would have been a little overpowered as a skill feat. When you take Terrain Scout, you gain the Terrain Stalker skill feat twice, which means you pick a specific type of terrain, snow, mountain, plains, and as long as you're in that kind of terrain, if you're only moving 5 feet per action, you don't have to roll stealth. You just are hidden. And the rulebook states you cannot be detected as long as you are more than 10 feet away from an enemy. The only way they get around this is if the enemies are actively searching for you. But if they're completely unaware of your presence, you can get up to 15 feet away from them without even rolling stealth. On top of this, if one ally tries to follow the expert when you do so, they get the same benefit. This is really great though, as your great axe wielding plate armor warrior can now get within 15 feet of a target without even rolling his -25 stealth check. Fleeting Shadow is cool, I just wish it was a little reordered. You hide, and then take the sneak action twice, which usually lets you move up to half your movement speed, and remain hidden. I kind of wish you could reorder these in any way you like maybe you could stride twice and then hide, or stride, hide, stride. It would be cool to have that as an option, but you have to hide first with this one. This does allow for really good repositioning though. This is 2 actions, and if you stride again for your 3rd action, you can stride behind cover, then use Fleeting Shadow to take the hide action and sneak twice, and then the enemy will have no real idea where you are. They'd have to actively seek for you. Scout's speed is honestly disgusting. One of the biggest things I praise monks for is their unarmored movement, which grants them just a flat bonus to move speed. Scouts get that for free. With Scout's speed at level 6, you get a permanent +10 status bonus to your speed. What this means is if you make an elf, and take the Nimble Elf Ancestry feat, and the Fleet General feat, and Scout Speed, then at level 6 you will have a 50 movement speed. Now you cannot stack this with a monk, thankfully, because the monk's incredible movement and Scout Speed are both status bonuses, whereas Fleet and Nimble Elf are just straight bonuses. Additionally, while traveling, you are treated as having 20 additional move speed, so you can kind of get ahead of the party, look around, and report back without slowing the rest of them down. And finally, Scout's Pounce. The Scout really likes their 2 action for 3 actions abilities. So long as you are hidden or undetected from all enemies, and you are not within 10 feet of any enemy, you can stride once and strike twice. If you are unnoticed or hidden from the target of these attacks, they are flat-footed automatically. The only downside of this ability is that your multiple attack penalty still applies to the second strike, but still, as long as you have an agile weapon, if you move up to someone and strike twice while they're flat-footed, that's incredible. If we compare this to the Scout's Charge from earlier, then effectively this is like Scout's Charge, but adding an additional strike, and the feint always succeeds. When you think about it in that light, it's absolutely disgusting. This is effectively 4 actions for 2 actions. Throw this on something like a Flurry Ranger, who doesn't usually have ways to inflict flat-footed, and this is disgusting. They also get Camouflage at level 12, which lets you sneak while observed. It's okay. But yeah, the Scout is kind of crazy. They are just kings of action economy from low levels to high levels, and I really like that their level 10 feat is a direct upgrade to their level 4 feat. The only change is that with the level 10 feat, you cannot critically succeed with the feint. It just makes them flat-footed to those strikes, and you do have to be hidden to make it work. But honestly, I think it's a worthwhile trade-off. I think these feats are perfect. I think this archetype does exactly what it wants to do. I think it does it perfectly, and the flavor of a Scout is absolutely there. Good job, Paizo. The Scroll Trickster. So many people have been waiting for my reaction on this one, and I'll save my thoughts until I've gone through all the abilities. The Dedication gets you the Trick Magic item feat and a +2 circumstance bonus to Trick Magic items. Additionally, you cannot critically fail to trick a magic item, you can only normal fail. For those of you who aren't aware, tricking a magic item means you can use it even if you shouldn't be able to. Normally, to cast a spell, say from a scroll, you need to be able to already cast spells from that tradition. To cast Magic Missile from an arcane scroll, you need to be able to cast arcane spells. But with Trick Magic Item, even a non-magical fighter can attempt to trick it and then cast the Magic Missile spell anyway. So that's a decent dedication. You get a skill feat and a direct bonus to using that skill feat, which is good because that skill feat is entirely how this archetype works. Looking at basic scroll cache. Basically, you get 1 first level scroll per day. That is it, at level 6. Now, the upside is that it can be any common first level spell from the core rulebook. Does not matter the tradition. It does not matter anything like that. Funny, though, that it specifically states the core rulebook, so you cannot take any spells from the Advanced Player's Guide or Gods and Magic, which is a weird stipulation. I don't know if that's what they intended, but that's rules as written. And then once you reach 8th level, you get a second scroll per day, which lets you cast a single 2nd level spell. Same requirements, same openness. Any tradition, anything you want. You can take them from 2 different traditions. If you want a level 1 heal spell and a level 2 burning hands from 2 different, 1 arcane, 1 divine, you can do that. Skim Scroll basically lets you quick draw a scroll. For 1 action, you can draw a scroll from probably a bandolier or wherever you have it on you, and then trick it. All for 1 action. Now keep in mind, to cast a spell from a scroll, you need to first trick it, and then spend the normal number of actions casting the spell. So if it is a Magic Missile scroll, you would spend 1 action to trick it, and then you would only have 2 actions left. So you could cast the 1 or 2 action version of Magic Missile, but you couldn't cast the 3 action version because you don't have that many actions. Expert Scroll Cache. Level 3 spell scroll, and then at level 14, you get a 4th level spell scroll. Level 16, you get a 5th level spell scroll. Simple as that. It really does follow the basic spellcaster archetype from here. The only other feat here is Master Scroll Cache at level 18, which gives you a 7th level scroll, and then at level 20, you get an 8th level scroll per day. So basically, at level 20, you get a level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 spell once per day each. Now, my thoughts on the Scroll Trickster are mixed. Overall, I think it's underpowered. I definitely, I'm incredibly hypocritical here, because this is why I ranked the Alchemist so high on my top 10 list, but you're trading away a lot, not even necessarily power, for versatility. Yes, this is incredibly versatile because you can prepare any spell from any tradition. That's incredibly powerful, but you get them so late. You get a first level spell at level 6. The basic and expert spellcasting feats from the Scroll Trickster are 2 levels behind all other spellcasting archetypes, which are already behind normal spellcasters. But what makes this even worse is to get any good use out of the Scroll Trickster, you really need to either be a high charisma character or a spellcaster. A fighter or a ranger with a low wisdom or charisma aren't really going to get much out of this archetype. This is due to the fact that, luckily, when you cast spells from scrolls, you get to use your own spellcasting DC and attack rolls. But if you're not already a spellcaster, that defaults to charisma. And if you are a spellcaster, you just get to use your highest bonus, so this is great for wizards and whatnot. I suppose this is a great way to diversify your spellcaster. You do get an extra spell slot per day of any tradition, which is fantastic. I guess I was just hoping for something that would allow a martial class to use some cool spells. This is good for rogues, especially a scoundrel charisma rogue. If you have a really high charisma, you're not missing out, you're effectively just as good as a sorcerer as casting these spells due to your high charisma. This would also be great for a bard. But I think my issue, I suppose they had to do this. If you got these at the same level, you got the basic and expert spellcasting benefits of normal spellcasting archetypes, there would be no point in taking those over these. So, I don't know, I think it's a little weak. I wish there was one more feat. Somewhere in here that did more. Besides the quick draw and besides the dedication, it's just spells. And when I look at an archetype, I really want to get more unique things out of it than just spells. It's a great archetype. There are people who are going to love it. There are people who are going to swear by it. Unfortunately, I'm just not one of those people. The Scrounger. Oh, the Scrounger. I'll save my opinions. Let's look at the dedication, which is easily the single longest dedication we've read so far. You can craft items without a toolkit, without a workshop, without anything required. You just take a -2 penalty, when usually you wouldn't be able to do it at all. So that's not bad. If you want to make a weapon and you don't have a workshop, you just take a -2. Additionally, you don't need a formula book. It's all upstairs. Now from here is where you really get into the meat of the archetype. You can craft temporary items out of anything, anywhere, from whatever materials are on hand, and it only takes 10 minutes. You want to craft a quick greatsword? Boom, 10 minutes, make the crafting check. So long as you succeed, you have a greatsword. Now the downside is that this is what's known as a shoddy item. Shoddy items inflict a -2 penalty to everything involving the item. If it's a shoddy weapon, you take a -2 on all attack rolls. Luckily, the Scrounger can completely ignore this penalty as they're making the items specifically for themselves. If you've ever seen the Junk Tinker Heritage feat for goblins, this is very much the same thing. Now, what they can craft, however, are incredibly limited. They must be level 1 or lower, and they can only be a weapon, armor, or non-consumable item. The temporary items you craft last for 1d4 hours, so it could last for as little as 1 hour or up to 4, which isn't bad. This could be a fun way to just craft a different weapon every day and use whatever you want, although, again, it's only going to last 4 hours. And rules as written, the GM actually rolls the number of hours secretly, so you, the player, don't know when your item will fall apart. On top of this, there are additional rules that, depending on the materials you have at hand, you might take heavy penalties to your crafting check. If all you have around you is mud and plant leaves, and you try to make a greatsword, chances are you're going to take a -5, probably even a -10 to the crafting check, because I don't care how good you are at sculpting, making a mud greatsword, that would take some skill. And that's the gist of the dedication. I don't want to spend too long on it. Reverse engineering, in my opinion, is probably one of the best parts of this archetype, in that when you look at an item, you can make a crafting check with a +2 to take it apart and learn the formula permanently. which is really cool. You know, if you don't know how to make a greatsword and you're given a greatsword, you can take the thing apart and learn it. Additionally, if you get a critical success on this check, you put it back together, and now you have both the formula and the item is still intact. With a normal success, you get the formula, but the item is destroyed. On the upside, you are left with the materials of the item, which you can use with your dedication to make new items. At first, high-quality Scrounger had me so excited. I thought, okay, cool, you can craft items up to 3rd level. Unfortunately, they still can't be magical or consumable gear, but hey, this should unlock a whole new slew of items. Plus, we can make them for other people. They'll still be shoddy, but because we made them for somebody specifically, that specific person does not take penalties. This is awesome, right? Now we can make a whole bunch of new weapons. No. Now you can make cold iron weapons, silver weapons, and a cold iron shield. That is all that unlocks from taking this feat. At first I thought some new ammunitions would unlock, but unfortunately most of those are magical and they're all consumable. I don't know where that falls because it specifically says you can't make consumable adventuring gear, so I don't know if consumable ammunition is fine. That's a little bit vague, but even if you could, there's not that much ammo you could make with it. I think there's only 2 level 3 or lower extra ammunitions you could craft with this. And unfortunately, this never goes up. This never gets better. There's no other feat that improves this, so you can only create up to 3rd level items. If you really need that silver or cold iron, fantastic. That's amazing if you need to kill that werewolf. That's about it. I kind of wish this kept scaling. Like, maybe similar to an alchemist, maybe always 3 lower than your level. Maybe that would be too good. I don't know, but it would still fall apart anyway, you know? Even if you could craft something 3 levels lower than your character level, it's still temporary. This is just so much missed potential. And finally, expert disassembly. You can use crafting to disable a trap or pick a lock. That's it. That one's really good too, and it's a skill feat, so it's solid, but I don't know. Overall, the Scrounger is very disappointing. I think they could have added one more feat. Hell, make it a level 10 feat so you can't even use it until the higher levels, but let us craft things that are better. Let us make a character that make it so you can craft during your daily preparation, and your shoddy item lasts until your next daily preparation. That would have been so cool. Every day you just use something totally different. That one day you have a warhammer, the next day you have a greatsword, the next day you have a dagger. Why? Who cares? It would be a hilarious character where every day you see them, they have some random junk weapon they put together that morning. That would be amazing. That would be incredible. This archetype is so disappointing, and they could have done more with it. The Sentinel. Armor. That's it. With the dedication, if you weren't already trained in them, you become trained in light armor and medium armor. If you were already trained in both of those, you also become trained in heavy armor. If your proficiency with any kind of armor goes up, your proficiency with the armor gained from this dedication also increases. However, if you're a monk, and your proficiency only increases in unarmored, it does not increase the Sentinel dedication armor. So if you're a monk who took this dedication and gained access to light and medium armor, and your unarmored proficiency goes up, your light and medium armor proficiency does not go up until level 13. I don't really know why this stipulation is here. Maybe there's some busted combo I'm not aware of, but it's kind of unfortunate. Steel Skin is, luckily, a skill feat. Unluckily, it's really useless unless you're in a campaign where you're likely to be ambushed a lot. You can rest in medium armor. If you're a master in heavy armor, which you're not going to be at level 4, you can also rest while wearing heavy armor. Typically, you're not going to be sleeping in your armor. This is helpful if you just need to be ready. Personally, as a GM, and maybe this is just me, I don't know how many of you use this, I don't really worry about the resting in armor exhaustion mechanic. Technically, if you rest while wearing your armor, you're supposed to take a bunch of penalties because you don't sleep well. But again, at least it's a skill feat. It's optional, you know, if your table doesn't use that rule, you can just ignore this feat. Level 6 is honestly the best part of this archetype. Gaining the armor specialization effects of medium and heavy armor. There are 4 different armor types of like chain, leather, plate, but they all do about the same thing. If they're medium armor, they give you resistance of 1 plus your armor's potency rune against a specific type of physical damage, whether it be slashing, bludgeoning, piercing, depending on your armor. That's really good, just flat damage reduction. Since anybody can take this, anybody can really benefit from it, and especially, honestly, if you're wearing chain armor, it reduces critical damage by, I think, 4 plus the potency rune. I do think the normal ones are better, the ones that apply to all damage, not just criticals, but it is a lot of damage reduction. Armored rebuff? This is flavor. This is not a super useful ability. Well, honestly, no. I will say this is better. I literally just thought about this. This is slightly better than I give it credit for. If an adjacent foe critically fails to hit you with a melee strike, so long as you're wearing medium or heavy armor, you can use your reaction to make an athletics check to shove them. Unfortunately, you have to make the athletics check. I think this would have been fine if it was an automatic shove, but you just push them back 5 feet. The downside is, unlike a normal shove, you cannot follow them, but usually you wouldn't really want to. Because if you shove them like this, especially if this is their first action on their turn, or even their second, if they critically fail, and you shove them back 5 feet, well, if they want to hit you again, they need to spend an action to step back up into melee with you. So this is a great way to use your reaction to completely cut out one of their actions. Not bad. It would be better if the shove was automatic, but it's still pretty good. Mighty Bulwark, it's honestly pretty good. If you're wearing Bulwark armor specifically, which I believe is just half and full plate, your bonus to reflex saves increases from +3 to +4, and it applies to all reflex saves, not just ones that deal damage. The Sentinel also has 2 additional feats, Sacrifice Armor and Greater Interpose, which basically just lets you reduce damage by double your armor's level. Neat. And then your armor is broken. It's similar to sacrificing a shield, or just using shield block in general, but you can do it with your armor. Especially for a 10th level feat, it kinda sucks. Greater Interpose lets you use that same ability, but on reflex damaging saves as well as normal attacks. Overall, the Sentinel's kind of underwhelming. It's a great choice if you're using the free Archetype variant and you just want to bulk up as much as possible. And damage resistance isn't super common to come by, so being able to just take some flat damage resistance on any character isn't bad. But like I said, overall, it's a very passive archetype. You're never going to be like, oh man, I'm sure glad I took the Sentinel archetype so I could do this. It's more like, I'm just trying to be a little safer, take 1 or 2 less damage per hit, and maybe if you're going all in and you have full plate mail, Mighty Bulwark is a must-have. I'm not usually a beefy, bulky kind of player, but if you are, this might be a great archetype for you. And the last archetype of the day, and oh man, even more than the Scroll Trickster, people have been waiting for me to review the Shadowdancer, and I will reserve my opinions until we've gone through it. First off, the dedication requiring level 8, and I know why. You have to be a master in stealth and an expert in performance, but you gain greater dark vision, as well as a +2 bonus to stealth in the dark. That's huge, just an automatic circumstance bonus to stealthing in the dark. On top of this, just purely for flavor, apparently your skin and coloring becomes gray right when you take this dedication. You just become Shadow Spooky Man. Shadow Sneak Attack. At level 10, you gain the Sneak Attack class feature like a rogue. And it caps at 1d6. It also doesn't stack with existing Sneak Attack if you're already a rogue. Shadow Magic. You learn one of 2 Shadow Focus spells, Dance of Darkness or Shadow Jump. And they give you a focus point if you didn't already have a pool. Interestingly, it doesn't say you get a focus point if you already had focus points, but with the way that focus points work, you would. It doesn't say so here in the description, but if you would receive a focus pool from any source, you do gain a focus point if you already had a focus pool. All Shadowdancer focus spells are charisma-based occult spells, and I'll be going over all of the focus spells after we get through the feats. Which won't be too long, because additional Shadow Magic lets you pick the other focus spell from the previous feat and gives you a second focus point. Shadow Illusion gives you a different focus spell and another focus point. Shadow Power is unnecessarily cool because you just get the Shadow Blast occult spell that you cast as one level lower than your focus spell. So effectively, this is always upcast at half your level minus 1 spell level. So if you're level 9, this will cast at 4th level, even though you can't take this until level 14. So if you're level 14, this will be casted at 6th level. It also increases your occult spell and attack rolls to expert. I should have mentioned that Shadow Illusion also increases your occult spell attacks and DCs to expert. These two do not stack. You can take both of them and get both abilities, but you won't become expert twice. It won't bump you up to master or anything. Just keep that in mind. And the capstone of the Shadowdancer is Shadow Master, which, I'll be honest, is pretty great. If you are in dim light or darkness, you gain 5 flat damage resistance to all damage except for force and ghost touch strikes. Effectively, you become a ghost. You become incorporeal. Additionally, when you make a reflex saving throw in the dark, you get to roll twice and take the higher result. I'm just saying, Shadowdancer in an Underdark campaign, I know that's D&D, but you know what I mean, in a completely subterranean underground campaign, kinda busted. But we're not done yet, we have to look at some focus spells. Dance of Darkness. For 2 actions, you move up to half your speed, and then either at the start or end of your movement, you create an area of magical darkness as if you cast the darkness spell. When you create the darkness, you make a performance check, and if you succeed, the darkness lasts for 2 rounds. If you fail, it still lasts for 1 round. And if you critically succeed, the darkness sits there for 1 minute, which, again, let's remember all of the bonuses and stuff that the Shadowdancer gets from being in darkness. This is pretty solid. Shadow Illusion is probably my favorite part of the entire archetype. For 2 actions, you can summon a shadowy illusion that fills up to a 20 by 20 foot space. And this can be really anything you want, and it still looks and smells and feels accurate. What's awesome is it doesn't have to just be an object, it can be a creature, as though you cast the Illusory Creature spell. This creature can also be up to 20 by 20 feet large, and deals 2d8 plus spellcasting modifier as damage. What stands out to me is that this is a 2-action summoning spell. Illusory Creature is as well, but it's still amazing. To be able to summon something and take a 3rd action should not be taken lightly, because right when you summon something, it also gains 2 actions. When you cast this spell, you summon something, it gets 2 actions, and you get another action. Fantastic economy. On top of this, every 4 levels you gain heightens this spell, increasing the space it can fit by another 10 feet, which means you can make something massive with this, by the way, and increases the damage of the creature's strikes by 1d8. Shadow Jump. For 2 actions, so long as you are already in dim light or darkness, up to 120 feet away, you can teleport from one shadow to another. You can transport yourself, as well as everything on you, everything you're carrying, and a familiar. However, if for any reason it would take something with you, perhaps if you're being grappled and you try to teleport, it automatically fails. I love this stipulation is, even if you're carrying a creature in an extra-dimensional container on your body, the spell still fails. Once you're level 17 and this is heightened, you can become invisible until the end of your next turn or until you're no longer in the dark. It's fantastic. So what do I think of the Shadowdancer? I think it's really cool. I think it's not as edgy as I expected, which I think is a good thing. I like that it combines stealth and performance in its uses. I never mentioned, but they do get some extra feats from the additional feats. They're mostly rogue feats. I believe they actually also get an investigator feat in there as well. They're not bad. I honestly really like what they did with the archetype. They made it a spellcaster, which is really cool. Now, we do already have the Eldritch Trickster, but I like all the unique focus spells, summoning shadow illusions, teleporting from shadow to shadow. It's really what a lot of people want, and especially because you only need to take 3 feats from a dedication, you can just kind of pick and choose what you want from this one. I think any character who wants this archetype will have at least 3 feats they want to take. I definitely understand why they waited until level 8 for the dedication, but I kinda wish this was similar to the Eldritch Archer and the Beastmaster, where it had a low starting dedication, maybe even a little bit weaker. Maybe make it something like the Acrobat, where it makes you automatically expert in stealth, and you automatically rank up at the appropriate levels like the Acrobat did. We never really saw anything else like the Acrobat that it scaled that way. And then give us a few low-level feats. Give us a low-level focus spell we can use with the Shadowdancer. I think there would be some cool early-game stuff you could do with this archetype, rather than saving it for a late-game 8+ character. But I do think it's a great archetype. It's not my preferred gameplay style, but that will not stop me from respecting this archetype and knowing that it is really freaking cool. And it's not even uncommon, so anybody can take this. Now, you may not be aware, but I actually took the Shadowdancer archetype myself. It's not my usual playstyle, but I figured I would try it out. And let me tell you, it has some great synergy with the Sellout archetype. Check this out. Thanks, patrons. Y'all are awesome. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Whasha! And until next time, no nat ones.